How's it going, folks? So, I did notice a comment from ChickMcn, and I kind of want to respond to this as well. Chick, you asked me if I'm really going to argue my rights with people who want to infringe on them, and you've asked me when this is worked out in history. And I'm going to say that, yes, I am going to continue to argue for my rights. Our founders, the anti federalist in particular, wanted to make explicit protections to certain rights. And it's because they are the very first rights that people who are overstepping their boundaries in government target first. One of those rights is still freedom of speech, it's freedom of press, and things of that nature. And the reason why they do it is for the very same reason that sites like YouTube censor your comments. They delete your comments. It's because your voice can have an effect. Why do you think big tech is so censorious? Why do you think certain politicians um, in Congress and in other areas, um, as well as unelected bureaucrats, have started to step up their game on targeting stuff like COVID misinformation over the last few years? Why do you think that they're trying to get big tech to cut off disinformation? It's because they know when people get that information, it does have an effect on their view. So, yeah, that is exactly why um, I will continue to speak out. Now, I could probably stop there, and that should be a satisfying answer enough, but I am going to continue. The fact of the matter is where those who are more right leaning have messed up is that they have let more of those who are more authoritarian left seize control of our institutions like the education system and like our media. And this is honestly where we've been having the most problems. Um, you'll notice the person I'm arguing with, it keeps on throwing out studies, and these studies are deeply flawed. At least the ones I've seen, and it's usually the case whenever somebody throws out a study in favor of gun control that once I get through with the hard data, it generally shows how flawed these things are. And yet, the narrative still gets pushed. There's a reason for that. Another thing, you've seen how a lot of people have brushed off Antifa and BLM burning down cities, destroying people's businesses, destroying their neighborhoods. You notice how a lot of that gets a pass, but a couple of people wandering aimlessly into the Capitol building on January 6th, so that was labeled the worst insurgency ever, and it was compared to 9/11. So, and by the way, you have a number of people who buy into that narrative. And unfortunately, had an old friend that, there's nothing I can say or do to convince this person otherwise, but this person buys into what the media says hook, line, and sinker. And, it is really hard to discuss things with them. At that point, they are so far gone at this point, it's going to take a lot more to convince them. However, if we continue to speak um, in favor of our freedoms, guess what? You still have a shot with future generations. Another thing I want to bring up, why do you think the quote queer activists, and I'll call them that because that's what they call themselves, why do you think they're targeting kids with drag show story time? You know, why do you think they're trying to push transitioning and sex change operations onto kids? Why do you think they're trying to push this propaganda onto kids? Because the average adult's going to tell them to go bite themselves, and it's a lot easier to mold kids. And by the way, I'm not talking about all gay people, all lesbians, and all trans, and all bisexuals. By no means. Most gay people and people that fall into the actual LGBT category um, just want to live their lives and be left alone. I'm specifically referring to the activist crowd. Why is it that these people will try to resort to calling parents at PTA meetings basic terrorists because they have something to say about pornography in certain cases being thrust upon kids? It's because speaking out does work. They don't want more people to speak out. They want you to feel like all is lost, so there's really no point to do anything. It's called demoralization. You know, and yeah, I understand that there are certain areas you do make good points at. There are certain areas you're a bit off the mark on. Again, um, we're always going to probably disagree that just because somebody's white or not white, or straight or not straight, that actually changes how valuable of an asset they are to freedom, versus being the enemy of freedom. I understand we're always going to disagree on this, but still, nonetheless, that's kind of missing the mark there. But what we do, if we do stand up for the Bill of Rights, we'll always have a chance as long as at least the Bill of Rights are being enforced. There is a way to try to pull ourselves out of the mess that, quite frankly, previous generations got us into. I'm not going to pull punches about that. But there you have it there. Um, Furthermore, I mean, if we're not speaking out, what is the alternative? Right now, what is the alternative if we're not using our voices? Well, I suppose we could resort to other means, but what do you think the result of that is going to be? Ask the average person what they think about Timothy McVeigh, if they know who he is now at this point. I mean, I don't condone what Timothy McVeigh did, however, if you listen to his arguments, he did this basically as a response to Waco and Ruby Ridge. And when, the question gets brought up about, well, he killed a bunch of kids there too, his response was pretty much, hey, you know what? It was okay when the federal government did it at Waco and Ruby Ridge. Why is this collateral damage not accepted? At least that was the argument that I've heard of from him. However, you see how Timothy McVeigh went down. He was sentenced to death, and he's pretty much painted as a terrorist. So, what do you think is going to happen if, say, somebody who's on the pro Second Amendment side of things, say, picks up one of our rifles, like so, decides to drive up to, say, Sacramento and say, takes a shot at Gavin Newsom and smokes his ass? Well, I can tell you what's probably going to happen. That person's going to get labeled a right wing extremist. They're going to treat this as if it's an attack on our democracy. And nobody's going to support him, and this will be exploited to further target our basic rights. And don't get me wrong, I do understand that there's a time and place for violence. The issue is whether it's ethical or not to apply the violence, and whether it's prudent or not. Because yes, um, I'm going to say I don't think all forms of violence are unethical, and anybody who knows me understands this. I understand that, yes, self defense may require some actual violence. That would be an ethical application. However, going up and attacking somebody simply because they disagree with you, it would be an unethical application of violence. You understand the point. So, yes, there are ethical applications and there are unethical applications. There are prudent applications and not so prudent applications. So, I'm going to leave that at that. And, obviously, there are going to be people, who may see this and try to flag this video just out of what I said right there. But this is just going to go to prove my point that people are particularly frightened of free speech when they have an agenda to push. All right. So, y'all take her easy out there. Have a great day. You guys got the comments section below. Again, I'm a free speech advocate, so have at it.